Hi, guys. Hello, hello. I'm very excited to be with you tonight. We are going to be having an author talk regarding this brand new book called Weather Magic, Witchery, Science, and Lore. And I'm very, very excited. The author's name is Debra L. Burris and Doc Firewoman. I guess that's Debra. We'll see. See if it works. I hope so. Hi, Yvonne. Hi. Oh, okay, good. I assumed it was, but I just wanted to double check.
Yes, it is. It's me.
Hi, Debra. I should have double checked that beforehand. I'm like, I'm going to assume that's you, but weirder things have happened.
Yeah, I'm not very good with branding. I've got so many different things that I go by, but that's the name I've had the longest for. I use it on Instagram. I use it for geocaching. I use it for all different kinds of things.
Cool.
So
Cool.
I'm too lazy to change it.
It's fine. It's fine. I'm just glad it's not like some weird random person that just wanted to say hi.
No, that's why I said, "Hey, that's me."
Yeah, it wouldn't be the first nor the last, I'm sure, but I'm really, really glad that you're here with us. I see a lot of people that are joining. There's been a lot of enthusiasm about your book, Weather
Awesome.
Magic. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm Danielle, by the way.
Nice to meet you, Danielle.
Nice to meet you too. Congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Thank you. It was definitely a labor of love. I didn't think I was the person who wrote books, and thanks to some tough love from some friends of mine, I decided to pitch the idea at Mystic South in 2022 and got a contract. So
Awesome.
I was really kind of in disbelief at first, and then I thought, there's no way I can write a book, and then I did. So
wow. Well, I find it hard to believe for you to think that you can't accomplish things. I mean, you have your PhD in physics, which is extraordinarily impressive.
Yeah.
Well, we're like, wow. I mean, this lady is very, very smart. So you're a scientist,
Yes.
a urologist, and an astronomist, and a physicist. And,
Yeah.
I want to hear more about you. So, I mean, you can give a little bio if you want.
Sure. I actually have a PhD, as you said, in physics. My area of interest was astrophysics. So actually, funnily enough, what I research is nuclear astrophysics. So I look at how the very small affects the very large. And so my background, like I said, is in physics, but at the same time, I was also reading lots of books about esoteric subjects, and I started to see connectivity between the two things when I was in graduate school, especially. And so I thought, everybody likes to believe that these are different things. Of course, this was, some years ago, because I am a woman of a certain age. So this was back in the 90s.
Yeah.
And so I was starting to see these connections, at least for me. And I've just kind of always operated that way in my magical practice, in my ideas about science. Those are not two separate sides of the ledger. They're really the same coin, just maybe opposite sides of the coin, but it's the same stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's kind of a little bit, that's my academic pedigree. I've been a university professor for 26 years now. Wow. And I'm actually this week in our Teaching Excellence Institute as one of the facilitators of diversity, belonging, inclusion, and equity. I'm one of the DBIE facilitators.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's a lot of fun. It's very intense. It's a very intense week. So if I look a little peaked, that's why. It's a lot.
I've got a visitor.
Yeah. I've shut mine out of the room, but you'll hear them probably before we're done, complaining that I have shut them out of the room. So
I wanted to say, if you hear any noise, it's her being wild. She's a kitten. So
I've got cats and dogs, and I live out in the country. So I accumulate animals. And so I have several dogs and several cats, and they believe they should have access to me at all times.
I totally understand. There is no privacy in this house. I actually have now 3 cats the baby I just rescued from under my business partner's shed. So she was unexpected, but I love her, but she's wild.
The cat distribution system sent you another one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But she fits right in, and she rules the roost already. So, now you're based in Arkansas,
Correct.
which is the Ozarks.
Yes,
and it looks
I live
so beautiful.
in the foothills of the Ozarks.
It looks so gorgeous. I watched that show, The Ozarks, which was fascinating because I wasn't familiar with that area. But I actually have a former sister-in-law and brother-in-law that moved out there, and it's interesting. I would think that they would benefit from this because actually, for the first time, as like New Yorkers that transferred over there, they love it. But a tornado just went through their neighborhood.
Did they live in Northwest Arkansas?
It's an area that's not typical in the tornado part, but it was like just a departure and it went right through our town. But luckily, they're safe.
Yeah, we just had a pretty severe storm. Now I live south of there. I live kind of in the edge of the river valley, the Arkansas River Valley, into the foothills of the Ozarks. But up in the Fayetteville, Rogers area, they had a pretty significant storm about 3 weeks ago.
Rogers, that's where she is. Rogers.
Okay, yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, very unexpected, but they're doing okay, thank God.
Well, and if they're from New York, they're probably like,
she was like, what just happened? But she really loves that part of the country, so it's nice to meet you, and I like learning about different areas, and it's perfectly apropos for what we're going to be talking about in your book, because I agree. I think, science and metaphysics are one and the same. It's all interrelated. It's all interconnected. We exist. We're all energy and different manifestations of energy. So when people walk into our shop, which is a metaphysical shop, and they say like, oh yeah, it's all hubbub. Like, why should a rock work? And I'm like, well, the crystalline structure carries vibrations, and we are stardust. Like,
that's right.
Yeah. So, I mean, we are stardust. What do you have to say about that? Because
it's interesting that you say that, because I'm actually working on a second book that deals with that directly.
Cool.
So, but I have always said that because the atoms in my body were made by the same stellar detonation that made the atoms in that, say, for example, carbon or oxygen. The carbon and oxygen in my body was made in the same stellar detonations that the carbon and oxygen in the Earth's crust, in that rock, in that tree, whatever. We're all made from stellar explosions or something along those lines. We can get really far in the weeds, because that's my actual area of research, and I love talking about that. But to rule out anything out of hand, I think we're just being arrogant and short-sighted. 500 years ago, we thought the Earth was at the center of the cosmos. And then now we know that the sun is at the center of our solar system, and we're certainly not at the center of the universe, although there are some people who like to believe that they are.
Yeah.
But, we are all connected. There's a great, it's like an auto-tune song that I play at the beginning of my classes every semester. It's by a group called Symphony of Science. And it says we are connected to each other biologically. So we are all connected to all of humanity. We're connected to the earth chemically, because we share the same chemicals. Yeah. And we're connected to the universe atomically, because the atoms are the same. So when we like to believe that we're these separate little magical beings, and we are, but we're really all connected in those ways. And I have just always operated in my life understanding that, call it the web, call it whatever you want, but I do not exist in a vacuum. And so energy is energy is energy. And and I heard someone on an interview the other day saying, oh, it's not the same. And I'm like, how is it not the same? Energy is, I heard this great term. Well, I've heard the term before, but we were talking in TEI about a platform for grading being agnostic. It doesn't have a preference. Energy is agnostic. It doesn't care where it came from. It's the same. It's energy. Yep. So it doesn't know that it used to be a pizza or a tree or nuclear fission or whatever.
Yeah.
It's the same stuff. So why not, use that? Why not tap into all that? And my idea behind the book was when people think about weather magic, they think about protection, or they think about, oh, I need it to rain, or oh, I don't want it to rain. But when you look at weather, there is a tremendous amount of energy available to you to use, just like you would use whatever energy you're raising when you're doing magical work or spell work or ritual work. It's all the same. So why not use it?
It's fascinating because it seems so obvious, but yet there aren't really any books that exist thus far about the topic and tying the two together as it relates to weather. But like you bring up good points, like when you're a little child and you're just like praying so hard for the snowstorm to hit your neighborhood so that school's going to be canceled.
Yes.
Or like you have that outdoor wedding and you're like doing a rain dance that the rain does not rain on your parade or on your wedding or on your event or your graduation,
Right.
And you come up with techniques and rituals that can provide protection, that can maybe help bring a summer squall in if there's a drought and you want to water your garden. I think it's very clever and very creative because, again, there's practices that have been done for centuries and cultures, and indigenous tribes in particular are very attuned to working with the earth and the elements, but we often take things for granted because we're so technologically advanced that we forget the core gifts that are given to us through nature.
Right. It makes me laugh. I teach meteorology, and one of the things that I do is I take my students and they'll come into class and they'll have their heads down looking at their phones. So I'll go around and shut all the window shades and go, okay, what's it doing outside? And they can't tell me if it's cloudy. They can't tell me what kind of clouds it was, any of that. And so I got them to start looking up at the sky. And I think, as children, we are fascinated by the sky.
Yeah.
And over the course of time, society kind of, ruins it for us. They say, oh, quit being don't have your head in the clouds. Don't be such a daydreamer. Don't, they use all this vernacular that makes you feel like there's something wrong with that. I think you should have your head in the clouds. I think that's exactly where it needs to be, because that way you can see a bigger picture. You can see an overview. You can see how everything is connected. And
I think it right sizes one's ego, because so often we're caught up here.
Mm-hmm.
But then you realize how vast the universe is and how we are just a mere speck in the grand scheme of Mother Nature.
Right.
It's happened before. It's going to happen in time perpetuity, and we are here for this moment. So let's be present. So actually, I spend my time in nature to reground myself.
Yes.
So I just think it's so nurturing and healing, and we are just so inundated and desensitized by technology and by the hubbub and the racing around from one thing to the next, constant overstimulation, that people really would benefit enormously from disconnecting and spending time, listening to the birds, spending time in nature, looking at the clouds, dancing in the rain. So I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, we create this, I think because most of us have smartphones now, we create this false sense of urgency that, oh, I have to answer this text right now. Oh, I have to answer this email right now. Oh, I have to answer, no, you don't.
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain probably messages that have to be attended to immediately, but I have found, at least in my profession, most things can wait.
Yeah.
Until I have the right mindset to answer them, or until I have had the space for myself to restore myself a little bit, to to ground myself. There's a reason I always tell my students, one of the things I talk to my students about when I teach my physics majors, they're going into these very intense fields of engineering and all these things. And I'm like, there's a reason it's called taking time off and taking vacation. Yeah. No one is going to hand it to you. You have to take it, and you have to take it, or you're not going to be the best self.
Yes.
You're not going to have your best problem solving skills. You're not going to have your best point of view. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I give to students when they're preparing for some really, really intense big event, go take a walk outside.
Yep.
Go for 30 minutes and don't think about it. Don't do anything. Just go outside and walk around, look at the trees, go sit under a tree, because then it allows your brain to sort of relax.
Yep.
And you can I mean, I've solved a lot of my problems that I've been trying to puzzle through on a project or something. I figured out while I've been out baling hay.
Yeah.
Because you're doing this, your conscious mind is busy doing this methodical thing,
Yep.
and it allows your unconscious to kind of do the work, or your subconscious to kind of do the work, or whatever. I'm not a
Right.
psychologist, but another part of your brain to
you
go,
go into a
oh,
meditative state. Yeah.
right,
And
right.
oftentimes things will come up for you that
Yes,
wouldn't normally.
for sure.
Yeah,
For
I
sure.
can attest. I had a career in advertising sales in Manhattan that was very intense, and I burned out. I burned out because constantly being accessible and working around the clock and being tied to technology, like always reactive and never being able to shut off. And one of the top performers in my sales organization every day diligently would put his phone down into his desk, and he would walk during his lunch break and just like walk around in nature and like just be inaccessible just to clear himself. And I thought that was a really smart, excellent practice because it was very disciplined. It's very easy to get distracted and not do that,
Right.
but it's important for us. It's highly restorative.
Yes. And nobody is going to tell you to do that until you're so far gone, it's really not going to help. So to have the practice in place, I think is really wise. Now, I'm not saying I do that all the time, but I have gotten better at it. When you get older, and one of the things that happened during my time as a professor at the university I'm at right now is I lost both my parents in the same school year. And that puts into perspective what is important. I mean, it wasn't a sudden thing. It wasn't like it was unexpected. They were, elderly, but, that email or that meeting, you don't have to be at that meeting. They can tell you what happened at that meeting.
Yep.
Even if you're in charge of something, you don't necessarily have to be at that meeting. And I know I speak from a place of privilege when I say that, because I am a tenured professor and I am full professor. I'm fully promoted. But if I could go back 10 years, 12 years to that time period, I would tell myself, make the time.
Yeah.
Everybody says, they always say you're not going to wish you'd worked harder.
Yeah.
What is your mistake?
Well, I can attest. Just this past year, I lost both of my parents within 5 months of each other. And, they were both ill, but it's very hard and you don't get that time back. So being able to like be a business owner and having a wonderful staff and team and business partner to provided me that flexibility, I was very fortunate. But you're right, you don't get that time back. And like, you're not going to say, oh, I wish I worked more hours and like, missed holidays because of work.
Yeah.
So tell me when you started your practice and started considering yourself a witch, because you now consider yourself an elder witch in a coven, as well as a very experienced scientist.
Well, I mean, when I put a word to it was probably when I started graduate school, but my journey started when I was pretty young. I was actually thinking about this today. My grandmother, who I gesture in the direction of this small country church that she was always at, had a book that was called 5,000 Years of the Bible. And I was a very mouthy, inquisitive kid and asked lots of questions. And that's not a good thing necessarily in that environment. So she gave me this book and said, you need to read this book. And I was looking through it, and there was a whole section in there about like Inanna and Ishtar and all these Sumerian Babylonian gods. And I was like, what about them? What's this? Little 6-year-old me is walking around with this book going, hey, what about these folks? What about them? And they're like, oh, no, that's not what we meant. And I'm like, but, and then my father also instilled into me a deep love for the land. I live on a farm that my family's lived on for over a century.
Amazing.
Off and on. They were tenant farmers in the early 1900s. They didn't own the property. They lived here, and then my grandfather bought it before I was born. And he instilled in me a deep love for the land and the life that inhabits this land, whether it's the animals, the wildlife, the trees. So I think that probably impacted me too. And then I remember very clearly, I was young. I don't remember exactly how old I was, but this, I mean, I hate to stereotype, but he was one of those country preachers with a bad comb over and a poorly fitting polyester suit telling me that my dog wasn't going to heaven. And I said, well, I don't want to go either then, because I don't like people. I'd rather be with my dog.
Yeah.
Where's my dog going? Animals don't go to heaven. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And so I never resonated with that teaching, right? I never resonated with that teaching. And then when I was able to finally get the one thing that was really good, or one of the things that was really good about graduate school, is I did not live here. I left and I went away and I got out of the little box that I lived in.
Where'd you go?
And I was able to explore different things. And I went, oh, this is what I think. This is the word for what it is that I think. So like a lot of people, probably since I could remember, I was on this path, but I put a word to it. I put the word witch to it when I was probably, 21, 22. And I'm 50, I'm about to be 55. So,
which was ahead of your time, because it was not very commonly, openly practiced. It was still kind of obscure.
Yes. Yeah. I was lucky that I went to school at the University of Oklahoma in Norman, Oklahoma, and I was really lucky for two reasons. The first reason, there was a very active CUPS group at the Unitarian Church there that I was able to start going to. The second thing, there was a shop there. At the time it was called the Four Winds, but then it started being called Raven Feathers, and the lady who owned that shop's name was Georgia, and Georgia was the one who went, this is what you are. Read these books. And she actually ended up, the tradition that I'm actually an elder in is the Georgian tradition of witchcraft, not this, not named for her, named for the founder of it, which was George Patrick Patterson. But she was one of the elders in that area. And then my mentor and high priestess was one of her downline. And so I took lessons and studied with my friend Marla, who was very egalitarian in her teaching. She was not, I think I'm using that word right. She said, you guys have been doing this stuff for years. You practice as a witch for years. So I'm not going to treat you like you don't know anything. Okay. We're equals here. We're going to collaborate in this. So I was really lucky that those things kind of converged all right there for me in my 20s and 30s, early 30s. And then I moved back home. And this was back when Witchvox was still a thing. I don't know if you remember Witchvox.
No.
Witchvox was a website that was kind of like social media before social media. It was a place where you could go and find out about events in your area, meet people,
cool.
Things like that. It doesn't exist anymore. I think it's went away in about 2012, 2013.
Right.
But that, I started looking on there trying to find local events. There weren't a lot because,
right.
This is, like you said, this is back then, even, 20 years ago when I first moved home, there wasn't still a lot of people who felt comfortable being out in public.
Correct.
But now that's starting to change. That is one of the things and that's one of the things, again, I can use my privilege for. I can publicly say, hey, y'all, I'm a witch. This is what I believe. This is my practice. And I mean, do I get some pushback from that? Yeah, a little bit, but not enough to cause me to not do it.
A lot of the younger people, there is that heightened awareness and acceptance of it, but it was not. There was stigmas associated. Yeah. And oh, you're weird if you use tarot cards, or if you use divination tools, or if you are interested in the different deities or practices. It was not widely accepted. You were kind of oh, what's wrong with you?
Right. Or worse, you're a devil worshiper. Oh, and I'm like, no, I don't believe in the devil.
Right.
Not like you believe in him. No, I don't believe in the devil like you. But I think that, like you said, the younger generation, and that's one of the things we've talked about this week, about how there's just so much more accepting of people who don't necessarily believe exactly like they do, and people that are not exactly like them, that I'm hoping that they're going to turn the tide on.
I love it.
I mean,
yeah.
It's more acceptable now. Like this weekend, we've got a big event in Benton, Arkansas, Enchanted Metaphysics and Mystics Market that I'm actually teaching at and I'm vending at. And there's some people protesting, but that event's been protested so many times, and it doesn't stop the 800 people who are going to walk through the door hungry to find people who think like them and they're seeking knowledge and they're seeking affirmation of that what they believe is okay to believe. So that's, if we can do that here in Arkansas, I'm hopeful that we can turn that tide. So
I think that's great. Have a great success at the event. Sounds fun. If I was closer, I'd come visit.
Yeah, it's a great event. We put it on 4 times a year. I'm one of the people that helps do the promotion for it. I go around and make flyers and take them around and stuff. And I've taught at it since I found out about it. My boyfriend is one of the organizers and promoters, so we've worked on that together. And then I've been lucky enough to be able to teach at it several times. And I'm vending for the first time at it this go round. So I have a bone art business, so I'm vending vending my bone art at the event. So.
Great. Well, everybody that's watching this, please follow, and if you live in the neighborhood, go check it out.
Yeah, Benton, Arkansas, come on out.
Awesome. So I took some notes from it's just so interesting. You've got so much information here. Now, I'm sure for you, this is probably very elementary in terms of like your understanding of the weather. But for me, I'm like, oh, there's like this strata and this strata. So I went to a lot of the activities and I think it's great. So like, for example, just a beginner, everybody that was like a kid gazing up at the clouds, as we talked about, like you have practices and rituals for cloud divination.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that everybody used to do and can do. And talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the nice thing about weather is it's accessible to all of us, right? We all interact with the weather. Even if we live in the city, doesn't matter where we live, somehow the weather impacts you. But you can literally just walk outside and interact with the weather. That's the beautiful thing about it. I feel like that when you talk about divination, right? I do a Omen Days divination where I go out, for the 12 days between Christmas and Old Christmas or Epiphany, and I look for signs, right? And, sometimes a bird is just a bird, but sometimes it's telling you something, right? Mm-hmm. So why not use the clouds for that too? So my idea is the way I practice that is I have a certain question or a certain thing I want insight in. So I kind of spend some time focusing on that. And then I literally either go outside or I open my eyes and I look up and I look to see what I see. What shapes do I see? What are the clouds, high or low? So a high cloud could mean that the answer is further out in time, and a low cloud could mean that it's imminent. Or it could mean that I need to take a bigger picture. So that's where my intuition comes in to help me interpret that. I look which direction the clouds are moving, right? So we learn about what the different directions mean. So why not incorporate the directions that they're moving? Are they clouds that are full of liquid water or ice? And you can tell that by the color of them. So something with liquid water means that a situation's starting to warm up, in my opinion. Or if it's got ice in it, that situation is kind of still cooled off or is frozen or something like that. So you can add once you kind of know about the science of that thing, you can put that in your toolbox, in your intuitive toolbox, to pull out when you look at that thing. So that's how I do my cloud divination, is I'll literally just, spend a few moments. I won't look at the sky. I'll focus on whatever situation or question that I have. And then I'll go and look and see what I see. Right. Cool. So that to me is one way to do it. Or you can, stay out there for, an hour and watch things as they move by and change shape and see how they evolve in your mind's eye to tell you how a situation maybe is going to evolve. So that's one of the practices that I like to do. And if that's accessible to most everybody, as long as you can see a patch of sky, you can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then also, I just kept opening up to rainbows, and I love rainbows. And it's so cool because you actually explain how there's even moon bows and fog bows, which is awesome. And you can talk about that. But how you associate
all of the chakras in alignment with the colors of the rainbow, and each color has associations with what it's in charge of. So you include in the book a simple, accessible meditation and practice as working with the rainbows and the chakras. So you want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, and the nice thing about rainbows and moonbows, okay, so those are basically relying on the light from something. And so when you look at light, white light or sunlight contains all those colors, right? That's how come we can see them. So even if you don't have a rainbow on your particular day, you know that light has those colors in it. And those are different energies of light, right? Different wavelengths of light. So they have different energies. So my thought is, if you were able to see a rainbow, why not use that moment? Because it's usually just for a moment, right? It's one of those stop and center practices, right? Where you just need to stop, take some breaths, get yourself back within yourself, get yourself right, and just, look at that rainbow for the few ephemeral moments that it's there, and allow that energy to sort of suffuse through your body, right? Not that energy is not always there, but that's sort of to me, a visual reminder to do that. Moonlight, same thing. The moon we see because of sunlight, so all the colors are still there. The fog bows are caused by sunlight, so all the colors are always there. It's just a thing where you can take that moment and just imagine that energy sort of flowing through you and cleansing or aligning those chakras, because Lord knows we need all that sometimes in this world where we're running wide open. And even though that energy is really always accessible to us, that rainbow is a very brief moment in time that gives us that visual reminder that we can pause and do that. It's kind of like wishing on a shooting star, right? We can always wish and do work for things, but that shooting star is a little reminder that we have that ability accessible to us.
I thought it was beautiful. Really, really cool. So you have very simple practices, and then you have like tangible activities like your snowflake activities, creating snowflake magic oracle cards, which is really cool because snowflakes are so diverse and unique. So you suggest like making your own oracle cards and like associating your impressions on those, and like talk a little bit about that. I thought that was just very clever and fun.
Well, what I like about snowflakes is snowflakes have sacred geometry in them. I talk about that in the book, but also the way they build is dependent upon the conditions, right? How they manifest themselves is a representation of the conditions that they're in. So you can look at the different ways that snowflakes form, and you can make little or you can go online and find pictures. I mean, I'm not an artist by any stretch of the imagination, but you can go online and find pictures, and you can think about, like that. I did not draw that. So one of my editors found that. But you can go on there and you can look at how things branch, or how things are just simple hexagons, or and you can think about growing, reaching out, so you can again make your impressions. So what I like to do is just go find some really cool pictures, and then because I'm a science nerd, I will think about the conditions which form that particular kind of shape. So snowflakes are not all what we think of when we think of snowflakes, and they form different shapes under different conditions. And so I will go so far as to say, oh, well, this one forms in a warmer environment than this one, or a more humid environment, so that's got more water energy, or this has got more heat, so it's got more fire energy. And I'll write little notes to myself on the backs of the cards, so that's something that anybody can do, because there's some great websites out there. There is a website that all the guy does is take pictures of snowflakes and talk about how they form. And I think I referenced his book in the text, so you can go find that book and find his name and look up his website. But so you can taking the physical conditions, that informs what that picture means to me. So how that tells me about what's going on with me. Is this situation cooling off? Is it heating up? Is it, do I need to think about more emotional connections here, because this is a more humid environment as opposed to a less humid, so less water, less emotional connection. So like I said, I put it all together so that anybody can do that.
It's so interesting as you're talking about it. What came up for me as you were talking about the formation of the snowflakes, Have you seen that documentary of Dr. Emoto from Japan about the
Yeah.
molecular structure of the
Yes.
snowflakes and the quality of the water if you speak kindly and lovingly to the water
Yep.
versus
Oh
being,
yes, because my
yeah.
little animist heart just went, oh my gosh. When I saw that.
So those of you watching, if you've not seen it, let's see. The comment is, yes, the gunas or the qualities is how we view the body in the Ayurveda.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. So yeah, I mean, it's really fascinating. So I love, especially now that it's summer, it's a good thunderstorm and
Mm-hmm.
lightning season. So
Mm-hmm.
like a summer storm with bolts of lightning and rolling thunder, nothing makes me happier. Mm-hmm. But I thought it was really interesting. Like you suggest collecting thunderstorm water and different ways that you can use that collection of the thunderstorm water, as well as your thunderstorm scrying,
Mm-hmm.
lends a fresh perspective. I thought that those were really cool.
Yeah, I'm looking around because I'm in my altar room and I've got a I've got a jug of thunderstorm water sitting right out of frame over there. But yeah, well, because if you think about when I think about a thunderstorm, it has everything in it, right? It has the water from the humidity to form the cloud. It has the air, so from the air currents pushing the water vapor up. It has the sunlight is what gave the energy for the rising of the air to happen in the first place. So you've got fire energy, and to form those little droplets, you have to have a nucleation seed, which is a little bit of dust or dirt or smoke or whatever. So you've got earth energy. So to me, a thunderstorm has all the other things in it, right? Mm-hmm. And what I love about these afternoon thunderstorms is they are very effective timers, right? Because they usually around here in the we get these little afternoon heating thunderstorms that start up around 2:00 in the afternoon, and they'll rain themselves out in a couple of hours. Yep. So if I'm wanting to do magical work, that's a great timer for me to do. And then when the storm rains itself out, that energy is released to go out and do whatever it needs to do. Scrying with a thunderstorm to me is really useful because I will watch, like, again, I'll focus on a question and then I will look to see, how is the cloud forming? Is it moving this way or is it moving that way? Is it rising up? Is it collapsing? What does the lightning look like in it? Now obviously I don't want to be outside when it's where I'm at, but I'll look at one off in the distance and watch it. So please don't go outside in the middle of a thunderstorm. Right. Don't do that. But so you can use, once you know the processes that are in place, it makes it really easy for you to, again, add that to your intuitive toolkit and start to use those techniques. Right. Look at which way the storm is moving. Look at the shape of the particular cloud, cloud form. Where is it growing? Where is it receding? So you can add all of that to your practice, and then just think about what that means. If it's doing something, what does that mean energetically? So if then you know what that means energetically, then you can say, oh, then that gives me information about my question or about my situation.
Right.
So.
Very cool. And you did talk about ways that, like, if you think about a thunderstorm, after it passes, there is that freshness in the air. The atmosphere is lighter, and then you have that fresh scent in the air, and it's just like very cleansing. So the association of the fresh perspective, I was like, wow, yeah, like wash it away, and it's almost like a little fresh beginning.
Yep. A little fresh beginning.
I like it.
And it happens here around here pretty much every afternoon.
Yeah.
Somewhere there's these little pop-up storms, but that's the thing about weather. This is like snow. I talk about snow as a thing that blankets and lets you just see the shapes, right? Or it quiets things down. Maybe there's too much chatter going on in your head and you need to quiet things down because snow muffles sound so effectively.
Totally.
So when you start thinking about those things, you can start adding all of that to your understanding of your divination.
Yeah.
So
it's great. Like, so lightning, as we were talking about it, first of all, I think it's interesting that you have the association of the protective properties with lightning. So I'd like to hear more from you about that. But you mentioned fulgurite, which is one of my favorite crystal, but it's not a crystal. because fulgurite is formed when lightning strikes the earth, and it creates like these little tubes.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first was, I tried to find it, but it's upstairs in the attic in my healing tray, so I couldn't get it. But I was taught that you can blow your wishes through the fulgurite, and it'll be carried up to the heavens.
That's a good idea. I never heard of that, so that's cool.
And as you said, it's good for bringing thought into form.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Well, and the other thing that fulgurite, because it does teach us about the past, you know, the paleo lightning, when they talk about paleo lightning, you can dig up fulgurites that maybe were formed thousands of years ago, and it tells you about the composition of the ground at that point. So to me, fulgurites also say, look back in your history, look back far back, look back in your ancestral line and see what information or what messages are there for you to, you know, lightning is, I do a lot of protection work with lightning because we do have a lot of lightning around here. And I've always been kind of an uneasy ally with lightning, if you read the stories in the book about that I talked about. But it is a massive transformation. It is something that massively transforms whatever it interacts with.
Yeah.
So I think of it as kind of like the time I drove the guy that I was dating's Corvette and I stomped my foot on the gas. When you ask for lightning to do work for you, you better be ready because it's coming and it's coming fast, and you better be hanging on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you also talk about, well, I mean, hurricanes. Talk about like, I equate the way that you write about hurricanes and working with hurricanes, because it's all four of the like storm elements,
Right.
but it's like, it's the equivalent to moldavite, like,
right.
Or a tower moment, like it's gonna wipe things, like shake it up,
Mm-hmm.
blow it up,
Yeah.
invigorate it, like, so things that seem immovable or unresolvable, it creates dramatic shakeup,
Right.
because it incorporates, you include the four corners: rain, lightning, ocean, and wind.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the thing about, and I will say this, I don't live in an area that routinely sees hurricanes, although, you know, with climate change, we are starting to see storms stay stronger even as they move inland. So we actually had a Category 1 hurricane come across a couple of years ago here, even though I'm well inland from the Gulf of Mexico. So the thing about hurricanes, though, is they don't have to be where, none of this weather has to be where you are. Even if you live in an area that doesn't get snow or doesn't get hurricanes, it is happening on the planet, and we are all connected to this planet. So let me just quickly say that this energy is accessible to you even if you don't live somewhere where it's happening.
Right.
But hurricanes to me they are the shake up. They are the wipe the slate. Tornadoes too, big tornadoes wipe the slate clean, you know. And the other thing about weather, and somebody said, well, do you believe you can stop a hurricane? I'm like, no, I never proposed that I could turn or stop a hurricane. And I don't know that I want to, in the sense of, when I think about doing protective work, it's not like I'm trying to stop that storm from doing its thing. I look at it as I'm trying to put a protective barrier around my people, my place, you know, whatever. And I learned this on the farm really quickly. You're never going to out muscle weather, just like you're never going to out muscle a horse. Never. Like I've got a big 1,400 pound gelding, and you know, I'm not going to tell him to do anything, but if I can work with him as a partner, then we can get a lot done. The weather is the same way. I work with it. Farmers have learned a long time ago that you have to work with weather as an ally or a partner, not an adversary, because you won't win.
Right.
You won't win. So, you know, it's one of those things where, again, weather is agnostic. It doesn't happen to you because of something you said or did.
Yeah.
Right. Or because, you know, what do they always say? If we don't get rain, that means we're not living right. That's not true. You know, it doesn't care about your personal choices.
Yeah.
But when I think about like protective work, I think of it more as I want to put a magical bubble or an energetic protective bubble around whatever it is.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, somebody just mentioned in the comments that there's a big storm coming up on Texas.
Yeah.
So stay safe.
Yes,
and, you know, since we're here in New York and we're on Long Island, which is an island, Hurricane Sandy affected a lot of us.
Yes.
And
Yes.
my parents' home is in Breezy Point, which is that community it was flanked by the bay and the ocean, and then they had a fire on top of it on the peninsula. So like, talk about like a perfect storm. I think it was like a Category 5. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But,
And by the time it got up there, it had run into a nor'easter
well,
too. So it was lovely.
exactly.
It
Yeah.
was extra energetic.
Yeah, it was wild. So I mean, but my brother-in-law thought he was being heroic by staying in the area that was evacuated. Like, it was a mandatory evacuation, but he decided to stay at the house. And when he saw the basement flooding with water, he had to escape his house into the neighbor's house upstairs. And then a fire broke out and the house filled with smoke, and they escaped to another house. It was like cars floating by. It was chaos, and like, he's miraculously survived. But you can't win against Mother Nature. Like, when those storms are coming, you got to just protect yourself and your people.
Right.
And
You got to use your brain. I mean,
it's so powerful.
right. It's the whole thing of the person who said that his belief would save him, and the helicopter came by, and then the rowboat came by, and it's like, don't, there's, I look at science as part of my magic. When they issue a tornado warning, I'm going to get in the bathroom, even if I've got my storm knife out, even if I've done all the things.
Right.
I'm going to get in the bathroom with my dogs and my cats.
Yeah.
I'm not going to assume that because I put my storm knife out that I have, that's part of my magical practice, is using my common sense.
Right. It's like, working with crystals and all holistic remedies are great, but you have to go to the doctor first. And like,
and I do all of that, but I also take my antidepressant and my high blood pressure medicine.
Exactly. So a question is, what are some uses of how you use your storm water?
Well, I use it in any way that I would use water in any kind of ritual practice or for any kind of tool cleansing. I also use it when I want to add I've got one from a pretty significant storm that we had. That was the one I happened to collect it from. When I really want to do a magical working that's got a lot of extra boost to it. So I'll put it in a bowl. I'll put my rocks or crystals inside of it that I put my intentions on. That's how I do it. Or I'll use it to cleanse my tools. You can use it like you do any other water, just your regular ritualized water. But I also use it. I'll use it for protection, to mark my boundaries. Like, I've got a little spray bottle that I go out and mark my boundaries with.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a lot of energy. And even though it was a thunderstorm, there's a huge amount of energy in that thunderstorm. So I'm putting that energetic barrier up. Here it is, up,
Yeah.
So if I know, during times of extreme fraughtness, I guess you could say, when the world seems to be a very scary place, I'll go around and mark my wards with that thunderstorm water.
Excuse me, my cat's trying to knock over the camera. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Come here. This is Phoenix. He wants to be seen, and now he's being shy. He literally was up behind it, like grabbing at the camera.
Oh, yeah.
Can we not? Look, say hi, and now go. Goodbye.
He's like, I don't want to be seen on camera.
Yeah, well, that's what he gets for interrupting.
Or, you can use it to dress candles if you want to, do some candle magic with a lot of, I think of it as like an energy amplifier. It's like Red Bull for your magic.
That's cool. I like that. Well, it's so funny because, I have these images that come up in my mind's eye as I'm talking about all of this with you. And even as I was taking notes and preparing for this, I was thinking about the X-Men and how they harness the different energies of the universe and the weather systems. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, wow, it's very dramatic, but it's also extraordinarily powerful. So learning how to harness that energy, or imagine harnessing that energy. Mm-hmm. Because energy can either be it can only be transmuted, not created nor destroyed. So how do we replicate that for a purpose and setting intentions, right?
And it's available to us. I mean, we don't need to be the X-Men. We can just be the regular people
right.
out here doing that, right? But that's what we're doing too, is we're tapping into that universal energy that's out there from whatever source it's from, and using it for our energetic practice, whether it's Reiki or magic or whatever you do.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think that sometimes we think, I remember when I started working on this book, people are like, oh, weather magic, that's too big. That's too big. And I'm like, don't you do Reiki? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, don't you call on the universal force of Reiki?
Yeah.
Yeah, which the universe pretty dadgum big. So how is that thunderstorm over there bigger? You know, I think because weather is much more tangible and in our face, that we think it's something that it's kind of like you see it every day, so you don't think about it being a magical thing. But the fact is everything, to me, there is no mundane in this world. Everything is magical.
Yeah.
If you choose to see it that way. So, you know, that has definitely shaped my practice. Everything is magical. Everything has, you know, the ability to help you in your energetic practice, and all energy is good energy to use.
I think this is such a great resource because you go from the most beginner simple practices to some really advanced practices, but like, you know, equating tornadoes with wiping the slate clean, visualization practices. Like, yeah, you could see how that is just wiping the slate clean, and then like, let's start fresh again. We're going to rebuild. We're going to, you know, solid foundation. It's like the three little pigs. How are you going to rebuild?
Right. Don't rebuild the way it was.
Yeah, but also like how beautiful you talked about wind chimes and making wind chimes, and that helps break up the winds and sweeten their energy.
Yep.
And I thought that was such like, I love wind chimes. I have some notes. It's beautiful. And I'm going to remember that.
Yep. Every day I'm like the ant and Twister that has all the wind spinners and the wind chimes and everything. And every day when I come and go from my front door, I run my hands across this one particular really big wind chime and say, just wind be sweet today, wind be sweet. You know, and if there's a storm coming, that's another thing. I'll go out there and do it again and say, okay, be sweet today, just be sweet, you know. And I talk to my trees that are here by the end of my house and go, today, you know, there's wind coming, please don't let it blow you down.
Well, that's serious. I mean, I've had many trees fall. On properties, and cause
I have some
damage.
huge oak trees at the west end of my house, and I just look at them and go, don't fall. Just don't fall. It'll be fine. You don't need to fall down.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so enjoyable. I know that we have a lot of people watching, and then we'll save it so that people can enjoy the replay too. But we do sell this book, and it is excellent. I really applaud you. Thank you. And I look forward to your next book. And your social media handle, you can see here.
Doc Firewoman. I think I have a link tree. I think I'm fancy and have a link tree. If you follow me on Instagram, it's also Doc Firewoman. On TikTok, if you do TikTok. If you look for me on Facebook, I have a Debra Burris teacher, author, witch authors page. And then I also have a page for my bone art business, if that's something that you're interested in, called Stories of the Bones, that you can follow me on there. If you friend request me, just drop me a message so I kind of know that you saw me on here, because you get those weird friend requests. You're like, who is this?
Totally.
But yes, please do. I love talking with people. I hope to make it up that way eventually. I'm going to be in September. I'm going to be just outside of Philadelphia at Anahata's Purpose. So if anybody goes to that, I'll be up there in September. Cool. I'll also, if you're in the Nashville area, I'm going to be at Nashville Pagan Pride this year in October. And if you're local to me, or if you're within driving distance of Arkansas, check out the Enchanted Metaphysical and Mystics Market, because that's a great event. It happens 4 times a year, and there's some really bomb vendors, and there's music, and there's food, and it's classes, and it's just a lot of fun. And I would love to come up and say hi. Don't be shy. I'm as common as a shoe. Just come up and say hi, and let me know, let me know who you are, and come up and say hello.
You have an open invitation to our shop anytime. Yay. It has been a real delight getting to know you. And guys, definitely get this book, Weather Magic. You can message us and we can invoice you. We ship everywhere. You can buy it on our website. And it's a lot of fun. I look forward to like even just using it as a resource moving forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate this opportunity. It was such a pleasure to get to talk to you.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Well, you take good care and watch out for those tornadoes.
That's right. Y'all too. Okay.
All
Bye.
right, take care. Bye-bye.